Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Pete, welcome back. Films and Stuff. It's a new Saturday, new episode, new stream or skip homework that we can go over.
That's right. Ethan, how are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
All okay. I am excited to talk about the show that I watched.
Oh, without further ado, please remind me what you've got and how it was.
So I got Locke and Key on Netflix.
All right.
So remember we kind of talked about
buddy cop movie or
given the fact that Locke was spelt with an E, we clearly surmised that it was the name of a family. So let me tell you the thought process / the viewing process. When I clicked on Locke and Key on Netflix, there were two instant red flags. One was it was tagged as fantasy horror. Now, I love fantasy. I hate horror. Horror doesn't do anything for me. Jump scares, that suspense. My heart's going to give out. And so horror movies, I'm not a big fan. The second thing was it was also tagged for teens. And I was like, oh, God, here we go. I don't want to see another teen drama. I was really not looking forward to it. So those were the first two red flags. But I have to say I was pleasantly surprised. Not that kind of high school drama. It wasn't like another CW show where like two teenagers are sleeping with each other and there's drama and all that. There could be in the future, but in the 2 episodes that I saw, or in the 3 episodes that I saw, there was none of that, so I was okay with that. The premise is that you have a single mom who's some kind of realtor or, person who flips houses for a living of some kind.
Is this set, hold on, before you go further, is this set like modern era, Middle Ages?
Modern.
Where are we?
Modern. I remember I made the assumption or the prediction that this would be set in like the 19th century.
Yeah, Wild West.
Yeah.
Industrial Revolution.
None of that. Yeah. This is as modern as it gets.
Sherlock Holmes era.
Yeah. Huh. People are driving hybrids. They're in, they've got iPhones, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So in any case, the premise is that a single mom with 3 kids moved to a new home, which is the husband's ancestral home, and we find out very quickly that her husband has been killed by an ex-student. He was a guidance counselor in a high school, and one of his students shot him. You see that in flashbacks.
Wow.
Yeah. And so this house that they move into is near Boston. It's on the East Coast somewhere, and the family name is Locke with an E.
Okay.
3 kids, typically, you have the broody, angsty son, the broody, angsty teenage daughter. So 2 older kids and 1 younger kid, boy, who's like very excitable and he's just excited by the whole process. Typical that you would expect.
Yep.
The premise of the show is that the young kid has the ability to hear whispers in the wind. But he can't accurately tell you what those whispers are, and there's clearly a supernatural element to the Locke family, and it turns out that they are, let's say they unlock powers, and I mean that fully with pun intended, because this kid discovers a series of keys, and each key gives him a superpower. So 1 key allows you to turn into a ghost so that you can kind of go flying around, leaving your body and just flying around and see other ghosts. 1 key gives you the ability to go into your own memories and literally open up a doorway where you can kind of go into your own memories. And, all these 1 key allows you, for example, to open up a door that has doors to another place in the world. So it's kind of like instant teleportation or like instant portal.
Are these
technology.
keys like physical keys?
Oh, physical keys. They look exactly like keys, and each key obviously has like a different motif based on its power. So like the key for looking into your past is called the brain key or the mind key, and the head of the key looks like a little skull or looks like a little brain, that kind of thing. As you would expect, it turns out that there was like a spirit, an evil spirit of some kind trapped in the well that's on the property. And then, of course, the kid lets that spirit go because she exchanges knowledge for her freedom. She tells him, I'll give you the ability to figure out what all the keys are and where all the keys are if you let me out of here, which of course he does, which obviously is a bad thing because she's clearly the bad guy in this role.
Never let a ghost go.
Never let a ghost
go.
Exactly. And
That's
then
our hot take.
by the end of the second or third episode, you realize or you learn that the father's murder was actually a conspiracy because, of course, it was. The kid who killed him was a part of some kind of gang that was aware of the powers that the Locke family had, etc., etc. I didn't really watch more of it. I only watched, again, I think the first 3 episodes. It's looks like it could be a very good show. However, I will preface that by saying that, look, there are definitely elements of teen angst and high school drama, which at my age, and, it's not my thing. It's, I don't really care to see about these kids in their high school drama and all that. It has appeal to a much younger audience. It doesn't to me. And that's the only reason I would keep it at a mooch. I would say that out of the 60 minutes, or, if you consider it an hour-long show, I don't actually remember how long it was, I would say like 30 minutes of it was kept towards the supernatural fantasy horror elements, and the other 30 minutes was dedicated towards like teen angst and high school drama. Not my bag, and that's why I kept it at a mooch. It could be interesting, but if that ratio teeters towards high school drama, I'm out.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely a mooch. I would recommend it. I think it's something you might enjoy. It's something that I'm on the verge of enjoying. I'm just weary of the teen angst element. But other than that, I think it's fine. I think it's pretty good.
Okay. But Lock and Key, a solid mooch.
Yes, definitely is. How again, I give the warning that if that balance goes away from the fantasy horror into more of teen angst or teen drama, it is a skip. Yep. But at the moment, as it stands, it's a mooch.
Okay. I had this week something called Made for Love, which is on HBO Max, and it's quite new. I mean, it's a 2001, and apparently it was renewed, and there's a season 2, and apparently it was nominated for 5 Primetime Emmys, and it has 1 win.
Ooh, okay, this sounds good.
Actually, I know the 3 main cast members so far. Then there's a lot of other people that I'm not familiar with. So it stars Christine Milioti, who you may have seen as Sarah in Palm Springs with Andy Samberg.
I have a huge crush on her. I think she's fantastic.
Oh, really?
Oh, man, I think she's so good. She was in...
You like the big eyes.
The big eyes. She was also in Wolf of Wall Street. She played Leo's first wife.
She was. So if you liked her character in Palm Springs, you will like the vibe of this show.
Oh, okay.
She plays very much the same. She's not ultra, I don't know if this is the right way to say it. She's not ultra feminine. She's a little bit rougher on the edges, down to business, sarcastic, right?
Okay. Sassy.
Very much
sassy. Is it a sassy East Coast modern day woman? Is that the stereotype that they were going for?
We're kind of getting there.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's Christine Milioti, who you know, and her husband is Billy Magnuson. Do you know him? He's been in a bunch of stuff. I know his face right away. He's like almost like too good looking for his own good. Like he's got this perfectly kind of like coiffed golden hair, wonderful smile. You know, like he reminds me of like Hangman in Maverick. You know?
Okay. Yeah.
Different guy, but like the same kind of look, you know, like they're just like perfect.
Okay.
So they play husband and wife, and this seems to be set somewhere California-ish. It's definitely not like an East Coast location. It's definitely California-ish. And he is apparently the owner, founder of a very successful tech company. And we're introduced to them, and they seemingly have kind of this perfect, idyllic, you know, luxury life in, you know, what seems to be like a smart home where everything is very, very modern and white and automated. You know, it's very clean, almost a little bit clinical. We just see that they seemingly have like this very deep, perfect, you know, marriage, although there's obviously some cracks that begin to be formed. And you see that Christine's character, her name is Hazel, has a little bit of kind of like, I want to say like a restless wife syndrome, where she's like, yes, I've got everything. Yes, I spend all day kind of planning galas. Yes, you know, everyone is coming in and out of my house to ask me, do I want this dress or this china or this? She seems like she's very unsatisfied despite the fact that she has everything, right? She's just not entirely content. So this is kind of how we're introduced to them. And there's a high amount of like technology incorporated into the show, right? So everything is kind of automated, you know, controlled by phones or tablets or things like this. So we see that, you know, she's really unhappy kind of like with her life. And eventually she escapes. And apparently their house is like on some type of compound. It's not entirely clear, like from a logistical perspective. But if you imagine like the founder of Google basically had like their house on the Google campus, she kind of like, it seems like escapes from the Google campus. And then she's just on the run and trying to stay off the grid. She's trying to stay off the grid because her husband's big tech product, or the newest tech product that they've offered, is something called, wait for it, Made for Love.
Hey.
Which is essentially some type of implant that goes into, you know, the inside the skull. And it allows a couple to basically like share their thoughts. So they're never apart emotionally, even if they're apart kind of like physically, right? So whatever one person sees, the other person sees. Whatever one person thinks, the other person thinks. They've just kind of like done like this mind meld, right? So they are couple number 001 who has tried this. And it's been implanted apparently without her knowledge. And that's her final straw, her breaking point. And that's what leads her to escape. But of course, the escape is a little bit difficult because everything she thinks or says or sees, you know, her husband obviously knows the same thing, right? So it's very difficult to escape from someone when they know exactly where you are, what you're doing, and what you're planning, right? So she goes to her father's house, who apparently lives also somewhere in California, but it's more of it's hard to tell where he lives, and that makes me think it's maybe not California, maybe it's the valley. It's definitely not like a sunny part of California. It's a little bit dumpy, you know? And she apparently goes to her father's house because they've been estranged for a long time, and her father is Ray Romano.
Oh, okay.
So she goes to her father's house and, you know, basically says, hey, like, these are my problems. I need you to, I don't know, help me escape. And this took me through 2.5 episodes. Let's talk about the good and the bad. The good is that I like Christine. I kind of like Billy Magnuson. He plays a very good, smug, arrogant kind of tech billionaire. I think Ray Romano's pretty solid. And the movie is, or the show, I should say, is actually pretty realistic in terms of, I don't want to say they're like action sequences because that makes it seem like it's a fighting movie or something, but like kind of the escape sequences are very realistic. You know, she's not, you know, you sometimes see people that like easily hurdle over things, they jump over things, or they push things in the way, and, you know, they get into a car and it starts right away and it zips off. You know, like it's just kind of like, I don't want to say fabricated, but it's like too easy, right?
Sure.
These action sequences, you know, when she is running through doors or down stairwells or things, they're actually pretty realistic. You know, like there is one point where she is trying to tip over a vending machine. And as you can imagine, like a lot of shows, they just like see like she'd push the vending machine and it would like jam the doorway, right? Here you kind of saw like how difficult it was for like a not very large woman, you know, to try to rock a vending machine back and forth. And it was like a very realistic scene, you know, getting into a car and getting away was done very realistic. So I really like that. What I don't like is that it's a little bit gory and a little bit vulgar, you know, so there is like some blood and some stabby things where she's trying to get away. And I thought that was not really consistent for what this is trying to be. Like, is this a comedy or is it an action, right? It's hard to combine those two elements. And the comedy is not really based on wittiness. It's more based on, again, like her gruff, sarcastic, a little bit kind of like vulgar, you know, what she says. And I'm not really a fan of that. Like there's times where you may kind of like feel like it was funny in your head, but there's no real like laugh out loud cleverness to it. You know, it just didn't like have anything I thought that was really unique in terms of the comedy. And I think that's why I gave this show, which I had really high hopes for, I gave it a 1. I gave it a skip. And the reason is it's just not getting me anywhere. The tech is not like really sci-fi like. I mean, just showing kind of like an interface on a tablet or a phone is not sci-fi, right? It's not like high tech. The comedy is totally not there. And kind of the blood and the vulgarity, like for example, in terms of vulgarity, her father has a sex doll. You know, like not a blow-up sex doll, but like a silicone one, right?
Sure.
And it was just kind of the way that he was like carrying her around. And like, I understood they were trying to make it funny, but it came off more like he came off like a little bit weird and perverted. And it just didn't come off across as like funny, you know? Like maybe it would have been funny, the opening scene, if she would have like burst into his house and like seen him there, but like it just kind of like played on for too long, and the way that he was like bringing her in his truck, and it was just I just felt like it was just like this big shtick. It wasn't really like trying to be clever or unique or funny. So I got through 2.5 episodes, and again, it was only because we were doing this homework for Streamer Skip. Had I just been like flipping through Netflix, I would have turned this off after half an episode. Like it just wasn't grabbing me. Maybe it gets better. I mean, you know how we do this. I mean, maybe it gets better in episode 4. It is for 2 seasons, but I have to say, after 2.5, there was nothing that was like causing me to continue watching this. It wasn't funny. I wasn't really learning anything. Like it wasn't challenging me from a sci-fi perspective. It wasn't full of like super beautiful people, erotic scenes. Like it just wasn't giving me anything at all. So I got through 2.5 episodes. For me, it's a skip, but I have to say, based on the research I did in advance, I had higher expectations for it.
Oh, that's a shame. That's a real shame.
It is a shame.
I may give it a go only because I'm a fan of everyone you've mentioned so far. Premise-wise, you know, when we made our guesses last week, I too assumed there would be some element of like androids that aren't real, made for being companions. of some
Yes.
kind, but that's fine. That's premise is interesting enough, but you're right. This is one of those shows where if the premise isn't fantastic, it really comes down to the execution of either the action or the humor. In this case, humor, which, if it doesn't come off, it doesn't come off.
Before we go on to our homework for next week, can we just take a moment to give a shout out to Carnival Row on Amazon Prime that you and I both love?
That's right.
And I think we only found it because of our streamer Skip, right?
That's right.
That's
right.
Big
and in fact,
win for us.
I watched it only because of your recommendation. And I must say, I loved it. I mean, I don't know if I would give it a must subscribe immediately, only because, and this is my caveat for it. The reason I'm hesitant to give it a must subscribe is because the show is, at this point, I think it came out in 2019, the first season.
Yeah.
And the second season has been filmed, but has not been released yet. Yeah. So the question is, how dedicated is Amazon in continuing it? Because if it's a show that they're not going to bother continuing onward, I'm less inclined to dedicate time and effort to it.
I mean, I think a few things, everything you said is right. I have to say, Carnival Row grew on me. It probably, after the first 1 or 2 episodes, I wasn't really vibing with it, but it really grew on me. And I have to say, like, it took some time, I think, to really kind of understand its characters, because there is no, as far as I'm aware, there is no canon. So it's something that you need to kind of like just understand who are the Fae, what is the geography that we're dealing with, right? There's multiple different types of characters, right? There's a Puck. So, I mean, I think it just takes time to kind of like understand everybody. But once you do, towards the end, I was really quite satisfied with it.
For those who are having a hard time visualizing this, I would say that this show comes remarkably close to if you said, I want to make a show based on D&D, but in a drama. This is it. There's some investigations. There's some great reveals. You have different races. You have the Fae. You have humans. It's actually quite good. And I think they did a reasonably good job of setting up this or building this fantasy world for people who aren't maybe necessarily attuned to the fantasy setting. Like, I can see people who are not fans of high fantasy still getting involved in this, because at the core of the show, at least in season 1, it's really a murder mystery.
It's a murder mystery, and it's also I think you're right, though. There's one of the reasons it took me a while to get in is that there's a lot going on. As you said, there's a murder mystery. There's a political system with a lot of like political machinations and drama, right? There's some social commentary with the Puck dude and the aristocratic lady, right? I mean, there's just a lot going on. And I think it takes time to kind of understand all those different elements and how they're trying to come together. And then once you kind of understand the background, then it's a lot easier to appreciate the entire show. But I think what really caught me up on the first 2 episodes, and why I was like, okay, like, I like Orlando Bloom. There's something here, Cara Delevingne, but like, I'm just not really like vibing it yet. I think it took me some time to really understand all the different types of characters and all the different things that were going on. And then once it came together, then it was really enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was, I mean, I loved it. I sent you a message as soon as I finished it. I thought it was very good. And I am very keen on seeing how this moves forward in season 2.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. I just wanted to give that a shout before we made our picks. So,
in that regard, actually, let me then just make a quick callback to a previous episode where we talked about She-Hulk. I just want to make a note.
Oh,
You called it a skip after watching, one episode?
Oh, yeah. I gave up early. I watched only one episode. And for me, it was an absolute skip.
Yeah, and I gave it, and I said, well, look, I'm a Marvel sucker. They've got me by the short hairs. I love it. I'm going to, even though I'm not loving the show, I'm going to give it a go and keep watching. And I have to say, of everyone I know in our, close friends, associates, families, colleagues, anyone who's related to me, I would say I'm probably...
Anyone who's anyone.
I would say I'm probably the biggest defender of the MCU. And She-Hulk, I have to tell you, Kevin Feige, Bob Iger, anyone at Disney who's listening, anyone at Marvel who's listening, I'm out. You broke me. I am out. I cannot defend the show. As much as I wanted to, I couldn't do it. Thankfully, you have broken the shackles on me. I can't do it. And for everyone who's defending it, oh, well, if you don't like it, you're a sexist or you're this, you're that. I will remind you, I loved Ms. Marvel. I thought that they've done, and in terms of, the idea, oh, well, you don't like, progressive shows or you don't like any of that. I think that's all nonsense. I think Ethan's views in the past and my views in the past will bear witness to the fact that we are very open to anything and everything and everyone, no matter what gender they are, no matter what race they are. But I'm out. I can't do this. I think this is a terrible depiction of not just superheroes, but I think they do a disservice to women in a way. I just think it's terrible. I'm out. I can't do this.
I have to say it is, I'm sorry to hear that, but I think, your words actually should not be, taken with a grain of salt. I think that's really serious. Okay, fine. You say if Kevin Feige or Bob Iger are listening, and maybe that's not the case, but realistically, you are a very, very dedicated MCU fan. You watch everything, right? I am definitely a strong fan, definitely in the percentile above the majority of people, but not at your level. I quit after one episode. You and I watch a lot of television entertainment. For me to quit Hulk after one episode, I think is really a bad sign. And for you to quit, you watch almost everything beginning to end, even if you're kind of like, nah, that wasn't great. For you to just come out and say, like, I've thrown in the towel, it's terrible. I don't know. It's a really damning statement.
Scene at the last episode was She-Hulk and Megan Thee Stallion twerking in She-Hulk's office.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I get that you want to be a part of the pop culture zeitgeist. I get that you want to have famous rappers that I would imagine appeal to a broad variety of the American audience. But in doing so, you've alienated your hardcore fans. This is not what I tune in to the MCU for. She went from being a very, at the outset of the first episode, they went to pains to show that, Tatiana Maslany, that Jennifer Walters, rather, is a good lawyer. She's supposed to be a great lawyer who's being oppressed by the patriarchy at work. That's fine. But then you kind of pull the rug out from underneath her by having her do things like twerk on screen with Megan Thee Stallion. And then I don't know. I just didn't like it. I just didn't think it was good. And I don't care if that makes me sound like I'm a sexist, because I know I'm not. And I just think that this is not a good look for the MCU. I don't think this serves any purpose to anything.
Yeah. I think I made a statement similar to that, which was I think that there's room for a superhero movie where you do have the reluctant superhero. And I thought that She-Hulk was going to be this really intelligent take on someone who says, hey, I really worked hard to get to where I am in life. I really don't want to rely on, this thing. I really don't want the notoriety. I don't want the responsibility. For me, this is actually a burden. I don't want this. Yeah. And I thought there's a very good place for that. And I was really looking forward to someone more of a superhero drama.
Yeah,
right?
almost
Where
like an anti-Spider-Man who says with great power comes responsibility.
Yes.
No. This was an accident. I don't want to be a part of this at all.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah. And they could have done that in a superhero way by giving her, again, I complained about that first scene where like she got accidentally 2 drops of blood, which I think raised all sorts of like chemistry issues, about how this has gone on for years without him, spitting or sweating on anyone. But anyway,
sure.
If she would have had maybe marginalized power, right? Like she'd be, for example, the strongest person in the gym, but she wouldn't be like bulletproof, and there'd be kind of this expectation of like, look, you should be this vigilante. You should be helping. And she's like, yeah, but like, it's actually very painful for me. I'm not bulletproof. You think that I'm a superhero because I look green or I look a little bit more like muscular, but like, it's not that easy for me. And I think that would have been a very good commentary on someone who kind of wanted to like not take that responsibility. They're looking at, the personal cost to them physically and emotionally. And again, professionally, that would have been a very, very intelligent take. And I would have been a fan of that, to be honest. But the way that they did it was, I thought, just terrible inception. And from what you've described it just continued down that bad path.
Yeah. In any case, to reiterate our scores, Made for Love, it's a skip from Ethan. Lock and Key, it's a mooch from me. And She-Hulk is Disney, I want my money back. Super skip from me now.
Yuck. So Disney's got a little bit of a problem, right?
They
had
got a massive.
They had Obi-Wan, which, okay, for the hardcore fans, we kind of got behind it. There were some, let's call them issues, but overall, I thought that was good. I'm very excited for Andor, but Andor is not going to get anyone apart from really hardcore Star Wars fans, I think, excited, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that because of She-Hulk's latest rating, Disney overall, their ratings as far as we are concerned for the year has dropped below a mooch. So now Disney as a platform, Disney Plus, is between a mooch and a skip, which is not what you want to be seeing. All right.
I really agree. The Mouse House not doing well. Can I make one more statement?
Please, yeah.
I have also decided to do a little bit of extra credit this week. I have heard that on Hulu, a series called The Bear is wow.
Okay.
I've watched the first episode. Should I give you the summary or should I wait until next week? I'll do the Cliff Notes version. A family owns an Italian beef, let's call it like kind of takeaway restaurant in Chicago. I'm not really like so familiar with that, but that's what it is. And the brother who owned or operated this Italian beef restaurant has died by suicide. And the younger brother, who was a chef in a Michelin star restaurant, apparently in New York, has come back to take it over. And it's not a comedy, although it seems like a comedy. It's actually a drama. But he comes back and basically takes over the family business. And he goes from this very high-end, respectable restaurant to fly by the seat of your pants with a bunch of, chefs in the back just cooking up a bunch of Italian beef and spaghetti and stuff like that in Chicago. And I have to say, once again, whoever approves cover art, it's so important because that cover art did nothing to get me even curious about this show. Nothing whatsoever. And maybe even the title needs to be changed. But I heard really good things about it. I watched one episode, and I would not say that episode is wow, must subscribe, but it's definitely enough to get me, let's say, eager to watch a second episode. And that's really what you want out of the first episode, right? You want you just want the continuity, or I guess what they say, Amazon, you want audience retention.
I think that this could probably be a good extra credit assignment as we have done in the past. So I will put it on my list as well. And and that's a good segue because for next week, you, my friend, will have to watch Hard Cell on Netflix.
Ooh,
and that's
I have no idea what that's about.
Cell like prison cell or cell like, body part cell, the amoeba or whatever it's called. I don't remember high school biology. And I will
Mitochondria.
That one, yeah. It's the powerhouse of the cell. That's right. And I will be watching 9 Perfect Strangers also on Hulu.
Oh, all right. Get your Hulu account warmed up.
That's right. Perfect.
Dust it off. Okay, so we did Lock and Key. It's a mooch. We did Made for Love. It's a skip. Next week, you've got 9 Perfect Strangers on Hulu. I've got Hard Cell on Netflix, and we'll both watch The Bear.
And we'll touch base on this show next week.
Indeed we will. Pete, pleasure as always.
Pleasure was mine. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.